one thing I do want to talk about, like we kind of hit on the relationship side. So like, obviously for a couple, it's, and I was talking about this literally this morning on a podcast episode and like circling this topic of family. And, Dave Ramsey put out a post and said things you need to know for sure before you get married.
If you can be in agreement in detail about how we're going to handle money, how we're going to handle your mother and her mother, the in-laws, how we're going to handle kids and if we're going to have them, and we're in agreement about religion. If you've got those 4 data points you're in unity on, you have a very high likelihood of having a successful marriage. Those are the big 4 that take people out. Disagreements over kids, money, in-laws, and religion take people out more than anything else. If you're in unity on those things, you can tackle anything.
And then one of them was, what you believe. And I just thought that's a really shaky foundation because you don't know. Oh, it was what parenting and it was what you believe was it was 2 more of those. And I was just like, if my marriage to Tara was based on first and foremost what we believe, for both of us, things have drastically changed in the last 5 or however many years we've been married. I know the year, but I can't do the math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So however many years we've been married, and like parenting, like I didn't know jack about parenting until I had kids, and now I know slightly less than jack about parenting. And so it's like I think more importantly, like that doesn't go deep enough. It should be like, how do we deal with conflict? How do we work through ideas? How do we have conversations about difficult things? That's a stronger foundation.
It's the commitment to the process, not to the result. Because if in my opinion, if you're living life the way that you should be living life, you should constantly be changing. Like things about you should be different than they were a couple of years ago.
You should be learning and growing.
Exactly.
And
if you're presented with new evidence, you should be willing to alter the way that you believe about something. And that was kind of the point.
The first time, buddy.
But that was one of the big, we're talking about cracks in the dam. That was one of the big cracks in the dam for me, was starting to realize how often I expected everybody else to drop everything that they believed and adopt my worldview.
Yeah.
But as soon as they would turn it around on me, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not going to your mosque.
No, I got to figure it out.
I'm not going to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. No, thank you.
Which is probably wise not to. But
you know what I mean? Like it just got to the point where I was like, this feels like the height of hypocrisy because I'm asking this person,
open your heart,
to strip away all context and perspective and facts and information that you've received your entire life, throw it up in the air and adopt all of the things that I believe to be true. But then they want me to do it. And I was like, no, thank you. Get thee behind me, Satan. You know what I mean? And I was just like, wait a second, this feels really wrong. It feels deeply wrong that I'm not willing to at least put on their glasses for a second and see the world through their lens and then try to have a conversation that might lead to truth. But the scariest part about it is that we don't want to admit that we could potentially be wrong, because everything that our entire life is built on this foundation.
Eternal life.
Yeah, our life here on earth and our eternal life is built on this foundation of our beliefs.
So when you're coming at life with that kind of tunnel vision, you've got that hard-headed kind of approach to things and like black and white, here's where we're at, here's what the truth is. Coming back into a marriage scenario, your guys' relationship, you both entered marriage with that personality trait to some extent. Jackie said like for her, it was more like the rule following. So she didn't really study it a lot. For you, you did study it, but you were still a follower, in a lot of ways. So when one of you flips that switch, starts asking those questions, starts getting those cracks in the dam, like, how do you navigate that? Like, how are you guys still married? is the broad question.
It is a good
question.
I
ask myself every day. Yeah. How do we do this?
No, we almost, just to be frank, we almost split up 3 years ago, 4 years ago now. We just went through a really, really big rough patch, and we, talked about it seriously because it was difficult to navigate. It's difficult when you're trained your whole life to think a certain way, where it's like, don't be unequally yoked together with non-believers. It's like, that's a clear directive in the Bible. So when I started kind of moving further away from that, she wasn't really following me, at first. It was very much like she didn't. So for the first year and a half, I didn't say anything about anything. I just kept it all to myself.
Suffered in silence kind of thing.
Right. But then afterwards, we started having conversations about it, and I would ask a question that she would know the answer to. And so her response was like, just to start praying for me, or her response was to go get me a book that I've already read and have me read it. You know, like her response was not to go learn why, because she also didn't know why. And so I think that started to build a little bit over time, when it was just kind of like, how at first it's met with like a, how dare you even question this? But then it's kind of like a, well, I don't really have the answer to that question, you know? And then that kind of builds on the next thing where it's, oh, I don't really have an answer for that question either. Oh, that's another one I don't really have a great answer for. And I think it started happening kind of a little bit more for her too. And so we had the real conversation of, you know, is this something that we want to continue, you know, moving down? What? And it ended up, obviously, we're still together. We just celebrated 8 years, but it was not easy.
I love you guys, but not to make this emotional. No, but obviously I love you guys, and like, I think you're a great couple. But I do have to ask, you know, two-part question. One, why'd you decide to stick it out when it would have been easier to say, we'll just go our different ways? Like, we've got different worldviews, like we've got different points of view. And then also, like, what advice would you give to couples where maybe one side is deconstruct, or whatever word you want to label it, is questioning and the other's not? Like, how do you work through that?
For us, I think it came down to that we still both wanted each other, and we still both wanted a future that was together. And so our decision was more about what's best for us in 5 years from now, rather than what's best for us tomorrow, because this is going to suck for a little bit. We went to, you know, couples therapy and stuff, and that was not fun. I did not enjoy that. No. Yeah. And so it was painful to work through it. But you know, now we're kind of on the other side of that. In some ways, obviously we are always working on our relationship, but in a lot of ways we're on the other side in a lot of the most difficult conversations that we've had to have. But like I said, I think at the end of the day, if you have two equally willing parties, that you can reach the desired results in almost every situation. Right. The problem is, most of the time, I think that there's one party that's not willing to move or at least have the conversation. And so that's when it ends up, you know, in a split. And I personally don't think that that's bad. I don't think that, you know, especially if you were married the kind of the way that we were, which was, you know, we started dating when I was 16. We got married when I was 21, you know, so like we were just two young kids, like that had, like, we got married when I was still in that bubble. So like I was committing to somebody for the rest of my life without ever experiencing anything outside of the world that I grew up in. Like, that's a dangerous thing to do. So I personally am not under the belief system anymore that like, oh, divorce is never an option. It's like, well, that's a nice little adage, but fact is, it is always an option. Like, and if you reach some point where like it makes more sense,
someone's like, honey, it's an option.
If there's a,
thank God,
no. You know, if there is one party that's not willing to do the work, or there's one party that's just like, look, this is how I'm going to be, and this is how I'm going to be forever, then it makes more sense to just go separate ways and be happy. I know so many people that stuck it out, quote unquote, stuck it out, and they're just miserable together. And it's like, okay, I guess you get a point for staying together, but why? Yeah. Why are you together now? So for us, it was just a matter of like, this is what we want in the future. It might take us a long time to get to that point, but I think that we're willing to, you know, fight it out for a little bit. And so my advice for anybody that's in a similar situation is to ask yourself that question. Yeah. Picture your life in 10 years. Are you with that person? You're not with that person. Yeah. And if you're with that person, then be willing to listen with the intention of hearing and listening and understanding, not with the intention of convincing them that they're wrong. And just understand that it's going to take time. You know, it's just a fact. Anything, and that's, to me, man, that's how anything in life is. That, you know, we're obviously starting the new show about figuring it out, because that to me is just like almost every single thing in my life that's worth having has been difficult to achieve or
that's how I feel about our friendship. and painful and treacherous and horrible.
Yeah.
But it'll be worth it someday.
Yeah, maybe.
Depends on the show.
The jury's still out.
No. Well, I mean,
yeah, that's just a fact. It's just, that's the yin and yang of life. The things that are awesome are also kind of not awesome.
Well,